Hello everyone, good day. My report is all about orientation and training. But before we go through to our discussion, let me first discuss what is orientation and training. So orientation and training is a requirement before the recruit starts working. When the hiring process is through, the new recruits will have to undergo orientation and most probably training. The importance of orientation and training is something that must be fully appreciated by management, including HRM and the rank and file. And now, let us discuss what is orientation. So orientation has been described by a writer in various ways. It may be classified, however, as a set of activities such as familiarizing new employees with company's rules, policies, and procedures with the view of making the employee well adapted to the work environment. For us to understand more about what is orientation, let us proceed to the purposes of orientation. First, it creates an initial safe horrible impression. Here, orientation is very important because as a new employee who has a good impression of the company and the work environment, especially on the first day of employment, will find adjustment easier. The absence of orientation, the new employee will have to find another ways of learning about his work. So, for instance, if he is not aware that working hours in the organization is on starch basis, he may think that it is alright to report for work anytime. So, it creates an initial safe horrible impression is very important in orientation. So, second, it enhances interpersonal acceptance. Here, orientation helps the new employee in meeting the expectations of the company and his work group. With the passage of time, work group adopt certain norms of conduct and they expect that the new recruit will confirm these norms. If he does, he is accepted by the group and he may proceed to work without much fuss. Third purpose is that it helps the new recruit adjust himself to the job. So here, it is very effective that orientation creates a sense of security, belongingness, and confidence to the new recruit. Provided with enough self-confidence, the new recruit will have a better chance of performing according to expectations. After knowing the purposes of orientation, let us proceed. Who is responsible for orientation? So, responsible for orientation is first the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of the organization. CEO is the best position to rally the new recruits to do their best. He can achieve this in at least two ways. First, he could give them a warm welcome on their first day of work by saying things like what a good choice of job they had made and how exciting it is to work in the organization. Second, he can make the new employees listen to and feel the company's vision during brief encounters with them anywhere in the company compromises. So, the CEO is also responsible in orientation. Next, the head of the HR department. So, the HR is the one who formalizes the employment of new requires the processing of some important documents like Social Security and Bureau of Internal Revenue forms. HR department must do is to provide the necessary administrative support to the new recruits who will be spared of the worries connected with those concerned. The HR department must act as the coordinating unit for the orientation process. The department assumes the role of host to those who will attend the orientation program. During the program, the HR department provides briefing on the various HR policies like those that concern promotions, transfers, layoff, and etc. The HR department must also train them in the procedures of conducting the departmental job orientation. Third is the supervisor of the new employee. The supervisor is the responsibility of the supervisor is to make the new employee feel that he is welcome. He accomplishes this by introducing the new employee to his co-workers. He should also seek the support of those in the unit of help the new employee adopt to his new work environment. Levels of orientation. Orienting new employees may be classified into two levels. First, organizational orientation, and second, departmental and job orientation. In organizational orientation, topics of relevance and interest to all employees are presented among the topic of the following. First, an overview of the company and the view of the company, compensation, fringe benefits, safety and accident prevention, employee and union relations, physical facilities, and economic factors. In the departmental job and job orientation, topics concerning the specific department and the job represented among the general items covered are the function of the department, job duties and responsibilities, policies, procedures, rules and regulations, tour of the department, introduction to the department employees. Now, let us discuss how orientation programs are presented. Orientation programs are aimed at providing relevant information to the new employee. So these are achieved through the use of various means such as classes, meetings, tour of the company office and plants, films, employee handbook, employee information, leaflets, slides, and charts. I hope you all understand what is orientation. To proceed, let us now discuss what is training. So training has been an important human activity since time immemorial. Historians have chronicled it as a required activity in the military exploits of noted personalities like Alexander the Great, Napoleon Bonaparte, Dwight Eisenhower, and many others. In modern times, training has been turned into a mere vigorous activity, and this is largely due to competitive pressures existing in the environment. In the business of world, training is regarded as an attempt to improve the employee ability to perform his job so the goals of the organization can be achieved. So, let's proceed to who is responsible for training. So, the person mainly responsible for training is the supervisor, who is assisted in some ways by the personnel manager of the training director. The supervisor of the new employee is in the best position to provide training. This is also because he knows what output his unit needs. In addition, the supervisor has the abilities and the skills and the right attitude needed to be imparted to the new employee. The supervisor also possesses some specific knowledge about operating the various equipment and appliances in his unit. In addition, the job-related skills, the supervisors who will involve in training must also have the ability to teach and act as a supervisor who had a good in performing certain job. That does not mean he can readily transfer his job skills to another person. So, other person is responsible for training. It is the personnel manager and the training director. His responsibilities, however, cover whatever assistance could be provided to the supervisor who is conducting training. So, among the types of assistance they provide are the following. They determine what training activities are needed. evaluating the training programs, informing management on the status of each programs, selling the training programs to all supervisors and managers, and lastly, integrating the training programs with the personal actions such as promotion and transfer. So, I have a chart here. As we can see, we have the employee. Employee need training. Employee need to improve his or her ability to perform, and that will lead to his achievement in the organizational goals he or she is committed. So an employee needs the acquisition of skills, concepts, rules, and attitudes. Now let us proceed to importance of training. In the highly competitive world of business, much is expected about the efficiency and effectiveness of employee in the performance of their jobs. This is also true in the case of non-profit organization which must reckon with survival with the growth. To be able to achieve the above cited requirements, employees must be able to do their job with maximum effect and minimum of errors. So, it is well known that fresh graduates after colleges and universities, no matter how good their academic performance are, will be less than adequately equipped with their job they will occupy once hired. The same difficulty applies to regular employees who are promoted or transferred. The gap that exists between what is expected of the employee and that skills and attitudes he currently possesses may be addressed through proper training. So training is very important as a person applying in a job. As a person who is not properly trained to his job, he will be a burden to his unit. Instead of producing the required quantity or quality of output, he will be doing less. This is translated as an inefficient use of resources. This cannot be allowed to continue because you are not trained. As an employee may either be fired or provided with training. Firing is the last desirable option because of the costs associated with the recruitment and hiring, not to mention the emotional trauma that the concerned employee will have to bear. So, as such, training is the preferable solution because it will help minimize requirement and hiring costs as the employee concerned is already in place and is familiar with the company and his job. So, training is a preferable solution to minimize recruitment hiring costs. Next, after we have known the importance of training, now let us know more about assessing training needs because as a training, there also needs for us to train well. So, training is not an end in itself but rather a means to an end. The object of training is to facilitate the accomplishment of some organizational objectives such as generation or more sales, more effective collections of receivables, improved quality of production or services, and the reduction of operating costs. Resources which also always are limited make it necessary for training activities to be directed towards achieving certain objectives of the organization. Not all training activities, however, are useful because some of them may be superficial and unnecessary. To prevent the wasteful use of training funds, an assessment of training needs must be undertaken. Needs assessment is a process to determine whether training is necessary or not. So, we undergo assessment. It normally involves identifying the following, like organizational goals, tasks that must be completed to achieve these goals, behavior necessary, and deficiencies between current required employee behavior. This process is illustrated in the methods of identifying training needs. So now let's proceed to first, the performance review appraisal. Performance review is the study of workers' performance to determine how it can be improved, and performance appraisal is the assessment of the quality of a person's work in job. So, the foregoing activities are complementary as the aim of appraisal is to assess performance while the review aims to determine possible improvement in performance. So, in appraisal, it is undertaken especially by comparing performance with standard requirements, reviewing the various aspects of the subject's employee performance may provide some clues on how improvements in performance may be done. So that's the work of performance review or appraisal. Next is the development center. Here in development center, it also referred to as assessment centers. It is used a variety of assessment techniques to ensure the coverage of skills and attributes in the widest possible manner. So among the techniques used are individual, group, oral and written, psychometric, personality, and career interest tests. So we can see all of this here in the development centers. Next is the human resource audit. A simple approach to identifying training need is by comparing the current inventory of personnel with the quantity and quality of employees that will needed in the future, usually from 1 to 5 years. So, when expected gaps in skills and attitudes are identified, a training plan may be derived. So here, the HR audit will provide information on the number of vacancies arising through retirement, promotion, resignation, and transfer. So the human resource audit assigned to all of this. Next is we need interviews. So in training, needs an individual employee may also be ascertained through interviews. The advantage of this method is that each employee will have the opportunity to present his own unique training needs interviews as discussed and be structured and unstructured. So, training needs individuals employees interview is needed in training. Next is we proceed to the questionnaire. The use of questionnaire is not economical, may of identifying training needs. The relevant personnel could be made to write their comments on certain questions relating to training and performance. So the advantage of this questionnaire method, because it has the ability to get many responses within a short period of time, and that short period of time is the training process. Next, observation. So in observation, one of the most earliest means of determining training needs is the observation. This method may be done formally. In using the formal approach, a trained observer accompanies the employee during work hours where direct observation is made. The observer may make notes of his observation to fill up a structured checklist and make notes later. So, observation is also the one who determines training needs. Next is the review of organization or business plans. Organization or business plans are good sources of information useful in determining training needs. So, a business firm on the expansion mode, for instance, will require recruitment of persons to fill entry-level position as well as managerial job. This will have to be supported by appropriate training for new recruits and above slated for promotion. Next is the desk research. Desk research involves a review and analysis of internal and external factors that may affect the performance of the employee. For example, A specific information on courses offered by schools and their methods of instruction will provide some clues on the level of knowledge of graduates. This is useful in determining what types of training are appropriate for new recruits. Next is a group discussion. One of the ways adopted by many organizations is the attempt to solve problems is group discussion. Under this scheme, individuals who are directly concerned with some performance difficulties meet in a group coordinated by a person who may have previous training facilitator. So the advantage of group discussion is that a problem like identifying a training need may be analyzed from viewpoint as diverse as the individual comprising the group. So when this happens, it is likely that a good solution will emerge from the exercise. Last we have job analysis and evaluation. So job analysis and evaluation will be undertaken lead to the preparation for the job description and the job specification. So the job description details the various tasks and responsibility of a certain job. The job specification indicates the various skills, knowledge, abilities, and other characteristics a person must possess to actively perform a job. When the person proposed to occupy a job is found to be deficient in skills and abilities enumerated in the job specification, a training program becomes a requirement. And let's continue our discussion to theories of learning. As a training is a learning process, it is important for one involved in to be familiar with some of the basic theories of learning, and the two of them briefly describe as first, the operant conditioning. So the operant conditioning is a type of conditioning in which desired voluntary behavior leads to a reward or prevent a punishment when someone associates pleasure with a certain behavior and continues that behavior, the person is conditioned. It allows that when someone associates pain with a certain behavior and discontinues that behavior, that person is conditioned. By using any of the four components of operant conditioning, employees are expected to repeat or change previous behavior. Like for example, increasing the salary of an employee who performs according to what is required, that is his or her desired behavior, will result to a repetition of his behavior. On the other hand, if he is transferred to an unpleasant surrounding like a hot or a humid office because of unruly behavior, he is expected to change his previous behavior. This is referred to as a negative reinforcement, whereas the previous example is called positive reinforcement. I will be citing an example. For example, a behavior employee. Employee have a desired behavior to do his job, but the management action behavior is that he want to add something positive like salary increase. So expected effect of an employee, previous behavior is repeated. So the component is that the positive reinforcement. It gives us positive reinforcement in the company. Operant conditioning, the punishment component is designed to change the behavior of the employee. It may be done in two ways. So introducing something negative like moving the employee to a noisy workplace, or removing something positive like cancellation of allowances. Here, operant conditioning have its function. First, social learning. Social learning also has observational learning, and modeling refers to learning new behavior by watching and imitating the behavior of others in social situation. And consider the case of an employee who had been attending special training and seminars. If the employee's performance has improved and was promoted as a result, this behavior will influence others to do the same. So, social learning may be achieved in three ways. First, by observing what happens to other people. Second, by being told about something. And third, through direct experience. So, observing is a powerful means in the modifications of behavior. Training activities may be made more effective if the trainees are allowed to observe the behavior of model employees. Next, let's proceed to training methods. So, in training methods, it may be classified into various types. They as follows. First, on-the-job training. So, on-the-job training is a method that places the trainee in the actual work situation where he is shown how to perform the job and is allowed to do it, but under the supervision of the trainer. When the component tasks of a certain job are simple and can be learned quickly by watching and doing on-the-job training is highly applicable. The job of the messenger, the email sorter, and the meter reader are good examples where on-the-job training is appropriate. So, among the advantages of the job training, first, it does not require special training facilities. Second, the trainee is actually involved in the production process while learning the same time. Also, it has a disadvantages on the job training consists of the following. First, low productivity while trainee is learning the skills. And the second is the possibility of cost errors of the part of the trainee. So, on-the-job trainings give us negative and advantages and disadvantages depending on what situation it may be. Apprenticeship. The qualify for any of the highly skilled occupations, trainees are required to undergo apprenticeship for extended periods of time. So here, they are subjected to a comprehensive exposure to the practical and theoretical aspects of their chosen jobs. The practical aspects are learned on the job, while a trained instructor in a classroom settings provides the theoretical aspects. For example, of jobs that are appropriate for apprenticeship training are carpentry, automotive, painting, credit investigation, or textile dyeing. Let's proceed to off-the-job training. So, off-the-job training is made outside of the actual workplace. They consist of classroom instruction, films and videos demonstration, case studies, simulation, role-playing, programmed learning, management games, and distance learning. Here, classroom instruction, this is the method of a trainer that is assigned to provide lectures to a group of trainees. Most often included apart from lectures are questions answer portion, discussion, and case studies. So a trainee lecturer can be more effective if he can do the following. First, motivate trainees to participate actively. Provide examples that the trainees can easily relate with, such as those that are job dash related. And third, provide challenging experience. This includes like films and videos. So first, these are various audiovisual means that can be used of training. So films, cassettes, and slides with pre-recorded contents of various topics have become common training tools. The training department may opt to produce the pre-recorded training materials, but it may be expensive to do. So in addition, when this training method is used, the trainer must be provided with the necessary gadgets used in the actual presentation. So next effective ways is the demonstration. Under this method, the trainees are allowed to observe an actual activity performed by the trainee. So, this method is a reliable way of relating theory to practice, like the training methods demonstration, have advantage and disadvantage. Its advantage and disadvantage is first, demonstration helps people who learn well by imitating others. It enables trainees to coordinate sensory input with motor functions practice. Third, it promotes self-confidence and builds skills through practice. Disadvantage is that demonstration is out of limited value of people who do not learn best by observing others. So let's proceed to case studies. This method makes use of cases which the trainee requires the trainees to read and analyze. These cases assigned present actual situation and enable the trainees to examine both successful and unsuccessful activities. So here, the trainees are required to identify the problems in the cases and they must also come up with recommended solutions. The case method is an expensive way of training employees, especially managers' decision making. Next is simulation. A simulation is a duplicate of the actual work situation where the trainee is allowed to see the result of his decision. This method is useful in training employees in skills as varied as production and producing management and interpersonal relations. Next is role playing. In this training method, the trainee required to assume a role and act of the scenario presented. Like for example, a trainee may be asked to take the role of an employee interviewing a job applicant. So after the exercise, the trainer provides feedback on how the role play dealt with the situation. The feedback is supposed to provide valuable reasons for the trainee. Next is a programmed learning. So this method presents condensed information which are highly organized and in logical sequence. So after a certain amount of information is provided, the trainee is asked to make a decision and answer the question. So the programmed learning are classified in the following, like computer tutorials, interactive video discs, and virtual reality simulation. Next is management games. So these are either board games or computer simulation exercises, which are primarily used for training managers. So under this method, trainees must gather information, analyze it, and make it decisions. Management games are usually played in teams of 4 to 6 persons with a trainee, as umpire. Management games are highly competitive. So let's proceed to distance learning. So there are times when employees who need training are so geographically dispersed that it is impractical to allow them personally to present the training center. So this difficulty has been addressed by the modern telephone. Because of the flexibility of the telephone, it is now possible for a trainee to communicate with a number of persons simultaneously and without all of them meeting each other personally, like what we are doing now, meet Google Meet, Zoom meetings, like that. Now let's proceed to evaluating training programs. After knowing all of those, we have the evaluating training program. So training programs, organization will survive and grow if the activities they undertake are effective. They are able to achieve their goals as organizational resources are limited and some training programs cannot be funded. So decisions have to be made on what training programs must take precedence over their others. As such, an evaluation of training program becomes necessary when properly evaluated less effective program can be discontinued and those that are retained can be strengthened. So training programs are designed to produce various types of outcomes, and several means are used to determine them. To what these outcomes are and what are measured to be listed as follows. First is the cognitive outcomes. These are used to determine the degree of familiarity of the trainee with the principles, facts, techniques, and processes that were discussed in the training. So here, the measures cognitive outcomes, pencil and paper tests are commonly used. Next, skill-based outcomes. These are used to assess the level of technical or motor skills of the behavior of the trainee. Third is the effective outcomes. These are used to measure attitudes and motivation of trainees. And lastly, result outcomes. These are used to determine the benefits afforded by the training program to the company. So the benefit may be experienced in terms to reduce employee turnover, absences, and accidents, increase sales, improve collection and receivables, and a lot more. So, thank you for listening. I hope you gained something from my report.